I have a really important video about something that I don't like talking about, which is so funny because it's something that is so key to autism and being on the spectrum. So, sensory issues. Oh my goodness, why have I waited to make a video? Because they affect me so profoundly and I deal with chronic pain. It's hard to talk about. It's painful to talk about sensory that I've had since I was a kid. My friend actually mentioned it tonight on Facebook, and I had to say to myself, Rose, it's time that you did a video on this because, yeah, it's something that's really hard for me to talk about because it affects every aspect of my life. I hear almost everything. I can hear white noise. I have like inflammation in my ears a lot and pain. I don't have them here, but I use headphones, fake headphones like this when I go out. I as a child, I had perfect pitch and I loved music. I would hum melodies in apparently I would memorize any song just from hearing it that I liked. So I was very attuned to sound, and I still am. But it's funny, when it comes to music, it's okay if it's good music, but I can hear everything. My ears are constantly, like, I don't know, warbling, and I wear these outside. I did a video a long time ago on earmuffs, because I've almost started a trend for myself with earmuffs, but during the summer, I'm a little bit self-conscious about earmuffs. During the spring, I'll wear some for fun, and sometimes I'll wear them anyway for fun. It depends on, I'll use headphones, even if I'm not listening to music. It's just something. Imagine what this is like for me, having an autistic child, and he melts down, and what that sounds like to me. It sounds like there's a knife going through my brain. That's how it feels anyway. Not meaning it sounds, it feels. It sounds and feels all at the same time. I have a strategy for that. I have these really tight construction headphones, and they're sitting on the pantry shelf in the kitchen, and so I go to the kitchen as fast as I can if he's shrieking like that, so that I put those on right away on my head, and they cancel out a pretty significant portion of the sound, so that I can continue to deal with him and get him through his meltdown. So that's my strategy, and I've mentioned that strategy to other autistic moms, because they deal with the same thing a lot with, screaming kids, screaming babies, you can imagine. So I think it's essential for every autistic mom to have a noise-canceling, a pair of headphones you can just slap on when that happens. And all of these things, by the way, I'd like to say all my sensory issues affect, since I've been coping with them since I was very young, it almost gives me an advantage to at least pseudo-coping with my fibromyalgia and health issues, which is another reason why people don't believe me. I had to deal with sensory issues since I was really little, and they were painful. So in a way, I feel used to it. And that's what I mentioned in my other video about my health issues and how I was so angry and disassociative that I wanted to just medicate. I was so used to dealing with them that when I would get kind of drunk or take a pill or whatever, I would all of a sudden be like, oh my God, it's this massive alleviation that I didn't know existed, this bliss that I didn't know existed, because I'm so used to dealing with this crap all the time. What I've learned now, and I'm not going to go into that too much, is that it's just not worth it. Nothing is worth that. When it becomes a problem and it threatens your life and it interferes with your life and it makes your life completely unmanageable, it's not worth it, no matter what it is that you're medicating. And the problem too with doctors is that they don't understand that part of me. That's another reason that I can't take medications. That's personal, but I mentioned it because one of the biggest triggers, other than trauma emotionally, that was another huge trigger, but second to that was the sensory piece. I was in so much pain, I didn't know what was going on because it's a sensory integration problem. There's no filter, and there's so much happening that the brain just can't sort of pinpoint, oh yeah, gee, that's too loud. Oh gee, this is a really busy place. I better get out of here. it's everything happening at once. So it really takes discipline to pull yourself down and discern what it is that's bothering you. And when people are not aware of sensory issues, they react emotionally and all kinds of things, and they even get, based on sensory sensitivity, mood disorder and all this kind of stuff, and anxiety. A lot of those are side effects of sensory issues, which are part of executive functioning. A big part of executive functioning. Yeah, sound is my biggest thing. Ears ring, especially my right ear. It's so agonizing for me because I'm an autistic person. I am an autistic person with fibromyalgia. They don't know how to deal with any of us like that. That's the thing, and we fall through the cracks. And a lot of it stems back to sensory. And it's all tied in, sensory integration. It's not just in the head, though. That's the thing. It's happening to the body as well. And we can't integrate it, so it's hard for us to describe, what's going on. And there should be more to help discern and treat and find out what part is sensory and what part is part of the physicality. Because those two things often do overlap in strange ways. The other sensory issues, movement. I have a really hard time in busy places with crowds. I have visual processing disorder. I can get very overstimulated by a lot of images. Ironically, though, it's when the images are kind of random and I don't particularly care about them. If you can see behind me, I'm a sensory seeker when it comes to images that I like. The same thing with music, I think. This is how my brain overlaps into ADD, fully engaged in seeking something they like, and they're totally avoidant of some stuff they don't like. And I think that's the case for a lot of people with autism. It's an overfiring extended further than an ADD, but ADD is sort of a little bit of a precursor. A lot of people know what ADD feels like because a lot of people deal with ADD, the label. And there should be more understanding of those with ADD. Out of all the non-autistic people I know, I get along with them really well. I get along with them the best. To have sensory issues and that will push them into being emotionally up here. And then that's one of the reasons why we're more sensitive to traumas. And unfortunately, traumas often do happen to us because our overfiring sensory system interferes with our ability to execute sociability in a typical way. Interferes with our ability to process upsetting events. So a lot of the theories lean towards that it's an overfiring of the sensory system. And that's an overfiring of neurons that sort of completely alters the way the brain operates on so many levels. So yeah, lights, fluorescent lights drive me nuts. They make me very anxious and batty some of the time. You don't see me when I shut down, obviously. Yeah, so fluorescent light drives me nuts. I love sunlight, but I am sensitive to the brightness, so I always use sunglasses when I'm out. And sometimes I use sunglasses inside, and I often do because it dulls down that sensory, the visual processing. I deal with what used to be called dyspraxia, and now it's called developmental coordination disorder, and I think that is a lot to do with the executive functioning of the visual processing, how my mind registers all the images in my visual field. And if there's a lot of clutter, I'm just disoriented. I'm getting my left and right mixed up. My brain, my fine motor planning is affected. So it's really hard because I have usually my office and my kitchen and stuff sort of depicts this desperately trying to be organized as possible, organized mess, absent-minded professor style kind of thing. And a lot of it is because, ideally, if I had more time, I have a little bit of an organizational system, but I have books out and stuff like that a little bit. When everything is sort of, literally the teaspoons are in this stack, and the soup spoons are in this stack, and the butter knives are in this stack, and everything is very separated. It's so ironic that I think so fluidly, but I need my environment to be very compartmental. And it's very funny because I always complain about over-compartmentalization in terms of the thinking process first, right? It's like I'm a bit backwards. I'm fluid, so I have to compartmentalize the outside. Sort of feels a little bit backwards to neurotypicals. They're sort of compartmental in here, and they're more fluid outside. Or they try to be anyway, but it doesn't always work. So yeah, visual processing, sensory issue. Tactual, definitely can't stand tags. Drives me nuts. Get really irate when my socks are the least bit, folded, creased. Another thing is sensory avoiding. So I'm so sensitive to like temperature shifts and stuff. That's another thing. The cold. My feet especially are very sensitive to cold. When I was a little girl, I used to have long showers and just stick my feet under the hot shower for a long time as a soothing, and I'd rock. Autists can go either way with stuff like sensory seeking and sensory avoiding. This is just a sort of discussion video opening up about my sensory issues, because it's been something that I haven't done before very much at all. So yeah, feet. I can't stand. It's very odd because for once I have bare feet right now. You can't see them, but I do. And that's well, and I just slipped on my slippers now. Psychological effect of mentioning it. I have a heater down here, and that's the only reason why I'm able to go barefoot. But typically, I don't like being barefoot. It also shows that I'm happy. If I'm allowing myself to go barefoot, then I'm really at ease, really comfortable. So yeah, don't like to be exposed. I tend to like to wear sweaters. Even now I'm a bit chilly because the heater's down there and my arms are up here. I'm very much an avoider. I was such an avoider as a child that I wasn't even in touch. And I said in my other video, I experienced a lot of inertia. I was leaning so heavily towards tuning out my sensory issues to cope. And then as I got older, I became very emotionally irate. I didn't understand what was going on. I was going through a lot too, but that was definitely part of it. The sensory piece really affects a good portion of the difficulties and the hardships and the negative challenges that we have to go through. So sensory seeking, I'm going to go through the sensory profile more in my next video, but there's seeking and avoiding. And a lot of autistic people can seek out, like my son is a major seeker. He will, and then there's the impulse control thing, like he will squeeze something too hard and like a balloon, burst it. He will bite holes in his shirt. Like he's looking for a tactile, like release kind of thing. That's what I do with my visuals, with my art and my music. I blast my music. I'm trying not to blast it as loud though, because the ringing has been getting worse in my right ear, and I don't want to. As long as the music isn't crazily loud. Even though I have a lot of funky, colorful clothes, I dress for sensory first. I like to dress fancy, but the fabric has to be breathable and somewhat, flexible and stretchy. Can't stand starchy anything. Can't stand feeling confined. But at the same time, I don't like things to be too flowy. I like to feel like, I always like to be enclosed. Let's just put it that way. I'm uncomfortable in a bikini, going swimming. It's not just body image thing or self-consciousness thing. These are things that I could try to overcome. Like, I'd like to dress up more for my music artist thing, and I have this stuff sitting in my closet, just as long as it's stretchy and relatively comfy. Soft fabrics too. I can't stand any fabrics that are rough in any way, itchy in any way. Yeah, and my processing speed in general is lowered because of my sensory sensitivity. And FYI, I heard this, but I'm not sure if it's true. I heard that females are particularly sensitive when it comes to sensory issues and affected emotionally. I'm not sure if that's true, but I heard that that's one of the most agonizing things about when women don't get diagnosed and helped, is that we have mega sensory issues and mega sensory integration. That's what I was going to say, sensory integration disorder. So integrating each sensory experience and identifying it, like, oh gee, that's cold, oh gee, that's loud, oh gee, it's busy. If there's too much going on at once, it's hard to integrate. And sensory processing. This really affects, again, I want to end with it affects how I experience my fibromyalgia. And a lot of the times if I'm seeming uppity and antsy and hyper, overly talkative, it's because I'm in pain and my brain hasn't consciously recognized it yet, because it won't recognize it until it's extreme. But when it's climbing up there, I might have a weird sort of neuro reaction or behavioral reaction that will definitely not be typical to what a neurotypical person would expect of somebody in that position. So yeah, that's a little discussion video on sensory, and after I'm done my book and everything and I come back with my site, I'd like to visit it more now that I have finally opened up about it. What I wanted to end with is, it's not fair how little understanding adults get for their sensory issues. It's the sensory issues that affect a lot of the other aspects of executive functioning, but yet it's hardly ever taken into account. We don't cut ourselves any slack because there hasn't been no slack cut for us when it comes to that. So my friend wrote something about that tonight on Facebook. My friend Iris, she's the leader of the Victoria Asperger Syndrome group here in my home city, and I wanted to read it off because it was very poignant. I love this. I've seen many descriptions of Asperger's and autism. Most of them mention things like social interaction and eye contact, and some mention stimming, soothing, stereotype behaviors, and special interests. Almost none of them mention sensory sensitivity, which for me is probably the most difficult thing about having Asperger's. Temple Grandin has said that this, Dr. Temple Grandin, as you know, Temple Grandin has said that this is because social interaction difficulties affect other people, but sensory issues affect only the autistic person having the sensory issues. So, the NTs don't concern themselves with sensory stuff.